I went to a pretty small high school in upstate New York, the kind where everyone knew everyone, and field trips were a big deal since there wasn't much else to do. Junior year, our environmental science class planned this 3-day trip to some nature reserve in the Adirondacks. It was supposed to be educational, learning about ecosystems and wildlife and all that, but really we were just excited to get out of school for a few days. There were about 30 of us students and 3 teachers acting as chaperones. We stayed in these old cabins that the reserve rented out to school groups. They weren't anything fancy, just basic wooden structures with bunk beds, a small bathroom, and a fireplace. 6 students to a cabin. I was sharing mine with 5 other guys from my class, including my best friend Tyler. The first day was actually pretty fun. We hiked around, did some water testing in the streams, identified plants, the usual outdoor education stuff. That night after dinner, all of us students gathered around a bonfire while the teachers hung out in the main lodge building. We were telling stories, joking around, just being stupid teenagers. Around 11, the teachers told us to head back to our cabins for the night. Tyler and I were the last ones to leave the fire. Our cabin was the furthest from the main area, maybe a 5-minute walk through the woods on this dirt path. We had flashlights, but the batteries were getting weak, so we were mostly navigating by moonlight. About halfway to our cabin, Tyler grabbed my arm and stopped walking. He whispered that he heard something moving in the trees next to us. I listened but didn't hear anything at first. Then I did. It sounded like footsteps, but not like an animal. They were too deliberate, too rhythmic. Someone was walking parallel to us through the woods. We picked up our pace, not quite running, but walking fast. The footsteps kept matching our speed. Tyler called out, asking if anyone was there, thinking maybe it was one of our classmates messing with us. No response, just those steady footsteps in the darkness. We got to our cabin and rushed inside, locking the door behind us. The other guys were already in their bunks, most of them asleep or close to it. Tyler and I told them what happened, but they didn't really care, just told us we were being paranoid. I took the top bunk near the window. Tyler was in the bunk below me. I was lying there trying to fall asleep when I heard a sound outside. It was faint at first, like someone moving through leaves. Then I heard it clearly, footsteps, walking around the perimeter of our cabin. I looked out the window and saw nothing but trees and darkness. The footsteps continued, circling the cabin slowly. I whispered down to Tyler, asking if he heard it. He did. We both just lay there listening as whatever it was walked around and around our cabin for what felt like forever. Then the footsteps stopped, right outside our door. We heard the doorknob turn slowly. Thank God we'd locked it. The knob turned back and forth a few times, like someone testing it. Then nothing. Silence. I couldn't sleep the rest of that night. Every sound made me jump. Tyler and I agreed in the morning to tell one of the teachers, but when we did, they just said it was probably a bear or a deer. They didn't take us seriously at all. The second night, we made sure to lock the door again. This time, I closed the curtains over the window too. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to Tyler shaking my bunk from below. I looked down, and he was staring at the door with this terrified expression. I followed his gaze, and my heart stopped. The doorknob was turning again, slowly, back and forth. We could hear someone breathing on the other side of the door, this heavy, raspy breathing. Then there was a knock. Not a normal knock. It was slow and deliberate. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more knocks. Tyler grabbed his phone to use as a light and went to wake up the other guys. I stayed frozen in my bunk watching the door. The knocking continued. When the others woke up, they heard it too. Now everyone was scared. One of the guys, Marcus, grabbed a baseball bat he'd brought and said he was going to open the door and see who it was. We all told him not to, but he did it anyway. He unlocked the deadbolt, gripped the bat, and swung the door open fast. There was nobody there. The path outside was empty. But in the dirt directly in front of our door, there were footprints. Bare footprints. Human footprints. And they led off into the woods. None of us slept after that. We sat up with all the lights on until sunrise. In the morning, we showed the teachers the footprints. They were still visible in the dirt. The teachers got serious then. They called the reserve management and some park rangers came out to investigate. Apparently there had been reports before of someone living in the woods around that area. A homeless man who'd been seen occasionally but never approached anyone. The rangers said he was probably just curious about the cabins, but harmless. That didn't make us feel any better. They offered to move us to different cabins closer to the main lodge, but by that point, most of us just wanted to go home. Our parents were called, and about half the students, including me and Tyler, left early. The trip was cut short and we all went home that afternoon. I still think about those footsteps sometimes, the way they matched our pace through the woods, the way the doorknob turned so slowly, like whoever it was wanted us to know they were there. I don't care what the rangers said about some homeless guy. There was something deeply wrong about the whole thing. Tyler and I never went camping again after that. When I was in 8th grade, my history class took a field trip to this old museum about 3 hours away from our school. It was one of those living history museums, you know, where they recreate what life was like in the 1800s with actors in period costumes and old buildings that have been restored. I remember being kind of excited about it, because I was really into history back then. Plus, it was a chance to get out of regular classes for a day. There were maybe 40 of us students and 4 teachers as chaperones. The museum was huge. It was set up like an actual village with a main street, houses, a blacksmith shop, a general store, a schoolhouse, all that kind of stuff. The actors would stay in character the whole time and demonstrate old crafts and tools. It was pretty cool at first. We were split into groups of about 10 students each with 1 teacher. My group started at the schoolhouse, where this woman in an old dress taught us how they used to do lessons back then. Then we went to the blacksmith shop, the general store, things like that. Around lunchtime, we had free time to explore on our own for 30 minutes before we had to meet back at the entrance. My friend Josh and I decided to check out some of the houses that we hadn't seen yet. Most of them were open for people to walk through and look at the old furniture and stuff. We found this one house at the far end of the village that looked different from the others. It was smaller and kind of run down compared to the rest. The door was open though, so we went inside. The first floor was set up like a normal house from that time period. Kitchen, sitting room, dining area, but it was really dark in there and it smelled weird, like mildew or rot. Josh pointed to a staircase leading up to the second floor. There was a rope across it with a sign that said, "Staff only, do not enter." But we were stupid kids and Josh dared me to go up. I didn't want to look scared in front of him, so I ducked under the rope and started climbing the stairs. Josh followed behind me. The second floor was even darker than the first. There were 3 rooms up there, all with their doors closed. We could hear floorboards creaking somewhere, like someone was walking around. Josh whispered that it was probably just the building settling. Old houses do that. I opened the first door. It was a bedroom with an old bed and dresser. Nothing weird about it. We checked the second room. Same thing, just another bedroom. But when I went to open the third door at the end of the hall, it was locked. That's when we heard it. A voice on the other side of the door. It was a woman's voice and she was singing. Not like a normal song, just this weird, tuneless humming that kept going up and down. Josh and I looked at each other, and I could tell he was scared too. I knocked on the door without thinking and asked if anyone was in there. The singing stopped immediately. Then we heard footsteps inside the room, walking toward the door. Slow footsteps, like whoever it was wanted us to hear them coming. We didn't wait to see who it was. We ran back down the stairs and out of that house as fast as we could. When we got outside, Josh looked back and said he saw someone in the upstairs window, a woman in a white dress, just standing there watching us. We found our teacher and told her what happened. She seemed annoyed at first that we'd gone somewhere we weren't supposed to, but when we described the house and the locked room, her expression changed. She took us to one of the museum staff members, and we explained everything again. The staff member got really quiet and said that house wasn't part of the tour. It was an original structure on the property that they were in the process of renovating, but it had been locked and off limits for months. He said there shouldn't have been anyone in there, and definitely not on the second floor. They checked the house and found the front door was indeed unlocked, even though it should have been secured. But when they went upstairs, all 3 bedroom doors were open, including the one we said was locked. And there was no one there, no woman in a white dress, nothing. The museum staff apologized and said maybe it was one of their actors who went into the wrong building by mistake. But even they didn't seem to believe that explanation. They offered to let us continue the tour, but my teacher decided we should leave. The whole thing had spooked everyone too much. On the bus ride home, Josh told me something he hadn't mentioned before. When he looked back and saw the woman in the window, he said she wasn't looking at us. She was looking down at something in her hands, and she was crying. I've tried to research that museum online to see if there's any history about that particular house, but I can't find anything. Part of me wants to go back and ask them directly, but another part of me doesn't want to know. Some things are better left as mysteries. My senior year of high school, I took this psychology elective class that I thought would be easy credits. The teacher, Mr. Harrison, was this really enthusiastic guy who loved making the class interesting with guest speakers and field trips. He arranged for us to visit an old psychiatric hospital that had been closed down in the 90s. The place had been turned into a museum of sorts, showing the history of mental health treatment and how it evolved over time. It was supposed to be educational, showing us the harsh conditions patients used to live in and how far we've come with treatment. But really, it was just creepy as hell. There were about 25 of us students, plus Mr. Harrison and one other teacher. The hospital was this massive brick building with wings extending in different directions. Most of it was blocked off because it wasn't safe, but they'd restored certain sections for tours. A museum guide met us at the entrance and led us through the main building. She showed us old patient rooms with metal bed frames, the common areas where patients would spend their days, the medical treatment rooms with equipment that looked more like torture devices. She explained how patients were treated back in the day, and honestly, it was disturbing. About halfway through the tour, I realized my friend Megan wasn't with the group anymore. I told Mr. Harrison, and he asked the guide to backtrack so we could find her. We retraced our steps through the corridors, calling her name, but she didn't respond. The guide got on her radio and called for the other staff members to help search. After about 10 minutes of looking, we found Megan standing at the end of a hallway that we hadn't gone down during the tour. She was just standing there facing a closed door, not moving, not responding when we called her name. Mr. Harrison walked up to her and put his hand on her shoulder. She jumped like she'd been shocked and spun around. She looked terrified and confused, like she didn't know where she was. She kept asking how she got there and why she'd left the group. We asked her the same thing. She said she didn't remember leaving the tour. 1 minute, she was with us looking at one of the patient rooms, and the next minute, she was standing in that hallway. She had no memory of walking there or why she'd gone in that direction. The guide seemed concerned and asked if Megan had any medical conditions like seizures or anything that might explain it. Megan said no, she'd never had anything like that happen before. The guide suggested we take a break and make sure Megan was okay. We all went to this common area where they had benches set up for tour groups. Megan sat down and drank some water. She seemed better but still shaken up. That's when one of my classmates, this guy named Derek, pointed out something weird. The hallway where we'd found Megan, the one she'd walked down on her own, that door she'd been facing had a sign on it. Derek had taken a picture of Megan standing there before Mr. Harrison went up to her. He showed us the photo and zoomed in on the sign. It said, "Isolation Ward, authorized personnel only." Below that, someone had spray-painted "Do Not Enter" in red letters. The guide saw the photo, and her expression changed completely. She got back on her radio immediately and was talking in hushed, urgent tones to someone. After she finished, she told us the tour was over and we needed to leave. Mr. Harrison tried to ask what was going on, but she just kept saying we had to go now. She led us quickly back through the building to the exit. The whole way, Megan kept saying she felt weird, like someone was following us. When we got outside, Mr. Harrison demanded an explanation. The guide finally told us that the isolation ward had been closed off for years, not just blocked from tours, but completely sealed. They'd had problems with people breaking in and vandalizing the building, so they'd secured all the entrances to that wing. But more than that, she said the isolation ward was where they used to keep the most dangerous patients, the violent ones, the ones who were a threat to themselves and others. There had been multiple deaths in that section over the years the hospital was operational, staff members and patients. She said some of the current museum staff refused to go near that wing. They'd reported hearing sounds coming from behind the sealed doors, seeing shadows moving in the windows. One security guard quit after claiming he saw someone standing in the hallway through the window, even though he knew for a fact no one had access to that area. Mr. Harrison asked how Megan could have gotten to that hallway if it was sealed off. The guy didn't have an answer. She just said she'd never seen anyone get back there before, and she'd been giving tours for 5 years. We got back on the bus and left. On the ride home, Megan was quiet. She sat by herself and stared out the window. A few of us tried to talk to her, but she didn't want to discuss what happened. She just kept saying she couldn't remember. About a week later, Megan stopped coming to school. Mr. Harrison told us she'd transferred to a different school in another district. He said her parents thought it would be good for her to have a fresh start, but he wouldn't give us any more details than that. I tried texting Megan a few times to make sure she was okay, but she never responded. I eventually gave up. But about a month after the field trip, I got a message from her late at night. All it said was, "I remember now, she was calling me, she wanted me to stay." I asked her what she meant, who was calling her, but she never responded to that message. I haven't heard from her since. Her social media accounts went dark shortly after. It's like she just disappeared. I still think about that day sometimes. The way Megan looked standing in that hallway, so still and focused on that door. The way she said someone was following us when we left. And that final message she sent me. I've never been able to shake the feeling that something happened to Megan in that hospital, something she couldn't or wouldn't explain, and whatever it was bad enough that she had to completely uproot her life and leave. I'll never set foot in an abandoned building again. Some places should just be left alone.